folks, welcome back to Room 237 as I continue my marathon of Italian horror and Giallo films. And I have yet another Giallo. But before I get to that, I just want to show some other Giallo and just Italian horror pickups I've done this week, including the one that I'm going to do. This is not a Giallo, but it is an Italian horror film, and it's one I've wanted to see for a while. Yes, there is a Blu-ray out, but this was much cheaper. The Severin release of Lucio Fulci's Enigma, his last horror movie of the 80s. This is probably going to be my next review. Another one from Raro Video. I might have shown this in the last Giallo pickup video I did, but Lamberto Bava's Body Puzzle. Always interested in checking out a Lamberto Bava film. Another one from Raro Video, and this is known as the sleaziest Play Motel. We'll see how that goes. This is one from the 60s, and that 1967, and that is Deadly Sweet. Check that out. And the one that I'm doing for this video, this is also a Severin release. I think it just came out yesterday. I pre-ordered it. I picked it up today. But it's the Severin release of The Fourth Victim. Yes, there was a Blu-ray of this as well, but this was cheaper. Now, the thing about this is, yes, it is a Giallo. Yes, it is a Spanish-Italian co-production. But for whatever reason, it's in Volume 3 of Troy Howarth's Giallo Encyclopedia, meaning it's a Giallo-style film from around the world, but not exactly a Giallo, which is kind of strange because, you know, it's still an Italian co-production, still a mystery, you got murders in it. Sure, it's a bit more Hitchcockian. I mean, there's really no blood, no sex or nudity of any kind. It's pretty straightforward, except for the twists, but the twists are kind of small. I'll say it's pretty fast-paced, though. And I guess this was actually kind of, like, really rare before Severin got a hold of it. But it was directed by Eugenio Martin, and it stars Michael Craig, who is known for a role in 80s Doctor Who, which I'm not very familiar with Doctor Who. Carol Baker, one of the biggest Giallo actresses ever. Of course, this was, I think she had already done all 4 of her Gialli with Umberto Lenzi, which I would love to get that box set. Also stars Miranda Campa, Jose Luis Lopez Vasquez, and Marina Malfatti. Screenplay by Vincente Coleo, Santiago Moncada, and Sabatino Chiafini, based on a short story by G.B. Guilford, which I think that had a different title. If I could just find where it was. I saw it somewhere. Oh, well, not important. Oh. Although elements bear resemblance to movies like Rebecca, Vertigo, which are both Hitchcock films, that makes sense, and the Giallo Amok with Barbara Boucher, which I need to get. It's either really expensive or it's Region 2 on Blu-ray, but to be honest, my region-free DVD player finally came in. So, of course, all the ones I'm finding now are on Blu-ray. But that also has Barbara Boucher. And the music, which I have to give notice to, was done by Piero Umiliano, who worked with Bava and Lenzi before. He's also known for doing Mana Mana, from the Muppets. Love the Muppets. And it doesn't say, but I think if it's not Della Orso that does the vocals for the score, it's someone that sounds just like her. And it's a beautiful score. That is one of my favorite elements of this film, especially the pieces that have her vocals put over it. And yeah, it's pretty Hitchcockian. It is full of more paranoia and sort of also kind of like a shadow of a doubt kind of vibe, because Michael Craig plays this guy named Arthur Anderson, which actually the original Spanish title for this was The Fourth Mrs. Anderson, which is kind of like The Fourth Victim. There's also another alternate title called Death at the Deep End of the Swimming Pool, which I think Death at the Deep End would have been just fine. And that's because the movie opens up with I was just based on the guy's name to say it. I don't know. Arthur Anderson, Michael Craig, his third wife. Oh, she's on a floaty in the pool, has that great score put over it. It like zooms in on her cigarette that has like burnt all the way down to the filter. But when the maid, Felicity, goes out, she's face down in the pool. So she stops Arthur from leaving, and all this is done without dialogue, so it's all visual storytelling. And if I remember correctly, when they go to pull her out of the pool, the music stops and it's all silent. I could be wrong on that, I don't remember. But they calmly take her out of the pool, take her upstairs, dry her off, brush her hair, put dry clothes on her, and then they call ambulance and police. And it's, again, almost to show like they've done this before, which really helps set up the whole courtroom act. It feels like a whole first act. He's put on trial. Supposedly, they found a bunch of barbiturates in her system, but according to the coroner, he felt that even though it was a fatal dose, he said drowning was the cause of death. But she was his third wife, and the third one to die. The first one was driving his car that had bad brakes. The second one fell off a building that was having construction done. And then this one, aided by the barbiturates that he bought her. But then the maid comes in and says, you know, she had been talking about suicide via barbiturates, which really gets him off the hook. He's found not guilty. Which then he asks her if that was true, and she says, no, I just wanted to help you. So this movie always has, like, it always keeps you on a hook somehow. And then he goes up, he's watching a slideshow of his previous wife. I like this. There's a picture of her diving in the pool, and we hear a splash. He goes out there, there's this strange woman, played by Carol Baker, who says her name is Julie Spencer. She didn't know anyone lived there. She always stops by to use the pool. He kind of kicks her out. She goes to this huge, dark Victorian mansion, but we see she just has a little tent set up that she stays. She got some newspaper clippings of his story. And she calls someone saying, yep, I just met him. And a really nice touch where she has kind of like a knife pointed right at the clipping. But either way, he starts to seek her out, and they get married. So, and the whole thing about the movie is he this Bluebeard type guy that kills his wives to collect their insurance? And is Carol Baker going to be the fourth victim? The thing about this Giallo is, yeah, there's a lot of twists and turns, but it if you go into a Giallo film thinking you're gonna get, if you want like New York Ripper or even some of the more tame Argento stuff that's still fairly bloody, or if you're a big fan of sleaze and uh, gratuitous nudity and stuff like that, you're gonna be disappointed. This is probably the most tame Giallo I've ever seen. I would say it's even more tame than Killers 1 of 13, and that one was really tame. But the acting is very well done. I love the score. Uh, Eventually, uh, there is a point where it really gets interesting, and it's only 88 minutes. And once you get past the whole court, like the sort of courtroom procedural, which that does kind of drag, the 88 minutes flies by. I mean, at one point, she's at her house and there's this other strange woman with sunglasses at night for some reason. Obviously, she's a little disturbed and saying, I heard this house was for rent. She's, no, I live here. Who told, don't I recognize you from somewhere? The woman runs off. But anyway, so Julie and Arthur get married. And it keeps you hooked because on the first night that they're together, married, she asks why the attic is locked. She says, don't worry about it. She goes up there anyway. He hears, goes up. And he thinks, like, his paranoia is that he thinks someone's watching him. He thinks she might be some sort of spy or some agent from Scotland Yard because it takes place in England. It was shot in England. Or, some journalist or whatever. She makes a comment about his previous wife. He slaps her. She runs away. And then he goes to claim her missing because he can't find her. And you do have some comic relief that's kind of silly, which is Sergeant Dunphy from Scotland Yard, who's played by Jose Luis Lopez Vasquez. And yeah, he's kind of a dope. There's even some shots where with his mustache and glasses, he kind of looks like Groucho Marx. But like, the first time we see him, it's the funeral of his third wife. He goes to the gravesite of his second wife, and Dunphy asks him like who this is, and he says it's my wife, and that's when he's like, you mean we buried the wrong woman? And he goes to run, he's like, no, stop. He's driven by the fact that Anderson is guilty, and when he finds out that he's remarried like within a month, he's destined to prove that he's up to it again and that there's going to be a fourth victim. But when he goes to report her missing and he says her name, Julie Spencer, the sergeant there says, I know that name. 1967, she was deemed mentally ill. She was accused of killing her husband. So now it's like, who will be the fourth victim in Mr. Anderson's life? I guess that's where I'll get into spoilers, because that seems like a good place to stop. But yeah, this just came out. Get this or the Blu-ray. Again, I think this would be more for the hardcore Giallo fans, the ones that really love the subgenre, really love the mystery. It's not too stylish. I mean, there's some, trying to think of some scenes, like when the woman with sunglasses is kind of standing aside as Julie walks around the corner, we see Julie's reflection on her sunglasses. I mean, there's some style, not a lot. Nothing that really stands out to me too much. But it's got plenty of twists, which you might not see coming. But then, when you kind of think back on it, you're just like, how did I not see that coming? At least that was the case with me. But yeah, I think people who think all Giallo is something like a New York Ripper, it's very bloody, brutal, intense, tons of sleaze. I think they're going to completely disregard this film. So, while I can't really recommend it to everybody, I can recommend it to Giallo fans. I think, you know, especially, if you're a Carol Baker fan, definitely. It's got that great score, and, it's very well acted. It does kind of have these Hitchcockian kind of tension and like this paranoid atmosphere, and who's playing who and who's going to come out on top. So, in that sense, yeah, I can recommend it to any real Giallo fans. But anyone that thinks they're going to get something really bloody, sleazy, maybe more towards a horror film, yeah, I don't think you're going to like it that much. But with that, I'm going to get into spoilers. So spoilers. Arthur goes to the hospital that apparently Julie was sentenced to. Her doctor says, in my opinion, yeah, she did kill her husband and she is paranoid. She's not fully cured. There's this other woman that's there that says, tell Julie to stay away from the lake. Foreshadowing. And then, of course, we get another scene where Dunphy shows up and he swears, he's like, all right, where is she? Where have you hid the body? I know you've done it. But then Julie shows up. And when they're alone, she admits, like, because he admits that he knows about her previous marriage, her case, and that she was put away at a clinic. And she says, I've kind of flirted with the temptation of suicide, but I'm too cowardly to do it, her words. So maybe that's why I sought you out. I read about you in the newspaper, and I thought, because she talks about remorse, and he says he doesn't feel remorse for his past wives. She's like, maybe that's why I sought you out, hinting you could kill me because I want to die. And he says, no, I think what you need is just someone to take care of you, and that's what I'm going to do. Very touching. And so then, at that point, she goes to make another phone call to the mysterious person saying, I can't go through with it. You got to get me out of here because I'm starting to fall in love with him. But Arthur hears her, asks who it was on the phone. She runs away again. But this time it's a car chase. She wrecks. We see him put her to bed, gives her a sedative. But then Dunphy and the sergeant are trying to break into the house because he didn't answer the door. And, of course, Dunphy thinks, oh, yep, because they found her car on the side of the road. Because his first wife died from faulty brakes. So he has to show her, see, she's in bed, she's still alive. That's when the sergeant says, that's not Julie Spencer. That's not the woman I arrested or that was on trial for killing her husband. Plot thickens. And so then we see that the real Julie Spencer was the woman with sunglasses hanging around the old mansion. Which we did see a scene after they got married that this guy was told to take the real estate sign down because the house has been sold, even though it hadn't. She just told him that. But she's walking through the house, and this is actually some style that I thought was nice. She has these visions of the night she killed her husband, which the house is all dark, and I mean, you got these nice blues shining off the like Victorian grandfather clock and the wood inside, nice blue nighttime moonlight shining off of it. But when she has these visions, it's, it looks like it's lit by candlelight. So it's like it comes up and it fades away every time she comes in and out of these visions, like it's happening right in front of her. And the night she killed her husband, he had three other women over, barely clothed. You don't see anything. They're playing cards. They're laughing because she came home. He's saying ignore her. And then she witnesses her attack on him. Of course, they're still playing cards on the floor. I guess it's hinted to that her memory can trigger trauma. Like if she sees something that can go back to that event, it'll put her back there. But I thought that was nicely styled. And there's also scenes where it like zoom in on her eyes as she's like kind of going crazy. But I like how the lighting changes from dark moonlight to fireplace light in between these visions. Then the doctor arrives, but she kills him. Then calls Arthur's house and saying, I'm Julie Spencer. I want to talk to Julie Spencer. She did kill her husband, and she's going to do it again. But now Arthur's trying to take it all in, that that's not his wife, but now his wife or someone with the same name is calling him. So he opts to leave, which Dumpy and the sergeant leave with him, leave a constable behind. But she did that to get them out of the house so she can go. The constable lets her in because she says she knows her. And by this time, Julie wakes up. And when Julie confronts Julie, she talks to her like, you've killed Frank again. You know, like, first, why did you rent your own house? Like, that's weird. And you killed Frank and you're gonna do it again. I have to stop you. And that's when she says, no, my name's Lillian. I'm not Julie. But she's knocked out. Three guys, they find the dead doctor. They realize, oh, it's the unstable woman, the real Julie Spencer. Go back, they see both Julies are gone. And this whole ending happens really fast. But when they get back home, there's this guy, Mr. Mitchell, which I forget exactly who he is, and the priest. Both of them were at the wedding. The priest actually married them. And they say, all right, look, you're not really married. And Dumpy's very happy to have this news broken to Arthur. He says, your wedding wasn't perfectly legal. Lillian was Gladys's sister, whom you never met. Gladys's third wife. She was convinced that you're guilty. She came all the way from America to exploit your guilt and pretty much get revenge. But then she started falling in love with you. She chose Julie Spencer because she was put away. She's a wealthy millionairess with a mysterious past. Seemingly, if you were guilty, it's the perfect kind of woman that you would have killed to benefit from. So that's when Arthur remembers what the girl at the hospital said, keep her away from the lake. So they go down to the lake, and both Julies are out on this boat. Real Julie is tying Lillian, tying her hands behind her, tying her feet to an anchor, saying, this is how you killed Frank, or at least disposed of him. Either or and. Saying, now you're going to be down there with him. But then I think like she fell overboard or got kicked or something. She ended up falling over and drowning. But the anchor also got kicked over, so she's like, Lillian's like stuck. But she gets saved. I mean, we don't see it. And then they get married for real. And they drive off to their honeymoon. And we see, Dumpy's mind is changed about him. He's convinced he's a good guy. And probably the funniest line, the only bit of humor that actually did work for me was when Felicity, the maid, there's, I think it was Mitchell, Dunphy, and Felicity are standing there watching them drive off. And she's like, He's he's always happiest when he's in love, and he always needs a woman around to love. Too bad his women don't stay around long enough. They both kind of look at her like, what do you mean? And then just says, well, he hasn't had good luck with wives now, has he? I thought that was funny. And then it just ends. So yeah, that was really the only bit of humor that worked for me. The twist, I mean, does everything in this movie make sense? I mean, it doesn't really go into what's making Julie stir. Like, okay, she's triggered by memories or things that can jog her memory. It'll put her back in the trauma, and I guess she can relive it, but it doesn't go fully into detail, and it does feel like it happens like really fast, which I will say, after watching several Gialli through subtitles with no like internet page with a plot synopsis to kind of help me through, this one I didn't need it. It's in English. It's very simple. I mean, the twists are pretty straightforward. They don't always make sense, but they're pretty easy twists. You know, I could see this as like a good beginner's Giallo. I mean, it was definitely one of the easiest to follow. The pacing's very forgivable. Short too. It's only 88 minutes. Once it got past that court scene, the movie went by like that. It does have enough twists and turns every few scenes. Feels like there's something that really drives the plot forward. So it doesn't allow itself to kind of drag or get bogged down or anything. So I appreciated that. I'll take that over any major, like, mind-blowing twists. And yeah, the ending wasn't anything super extravagant or climactic. And it actually had a happy ending, which doesn't always happen in Gialli. But I could say this was still a fair, entertaining Giallo. Not one of my favorites, but still very decent. The acting is also very well done. The score is excellent. I really love the score. But I thought it was fairly solid. And definitely, if you're a fan of Gialli, it's worth checking out. So, I've got more Giallo films to get to. I had about 20 more Giallo films on my wish list that I was going to tackle, a couple every week. But I really got to take a bit of a financial break. So I do have a couple more orders to place. I have a few more coming in. But what's left on my wish list, I'm going to be cutting in half. Then I'm going to be taking a bit of a financial break. And then maybe I'll come back to it. I'll do like a mini marathon of Giallo, of ones I didn't get. But other than, these that I showed, I still have around a dozen left to get to. So there's still plenty of Giallo for me to get through. And, I don't know, maybe a month or so of just kind of financially recuperating before I tackle it again. But, yeah, and then I'll be doing collection videos and top 10, bottom 10, 10 underrated, or maybe best twists or best kills or whatever. But, yeah. Severin also did it looks great. I'm not really a snob when it comes to transfers and quality. It looked and sounded fair enough. So, yeah. And the DVD is just fine. It was cheaper than the Blu-ray. But that is the Italian-Spanish Giallo, The Fourth Victim. Thank you for watching.